storm or anything, but there is a tropical storm out here across the central Atlantic, and you can clearly see it. Came off of the African coast a couple of days ago, and it continues to move west. Here's the latest. It's the 7th tropical storm of the season in the Atlantic Basin. Its name is George. It is located 1,650 miles east of the Lesser Antilles. Of course, this being the Lesser Antilles, the Leeward, the Windward Islands. It is moving west at 20 miles an hour, so it's moving pretty much due west. And that, of course, will take it closer toward the islands here. It has winds of 50 miles an hour, and the lowest estimated central pressure is about 1,000 millibars. Now, George has been strengthening just a little bit over the last 12 hours or so. It is a slow mover. As it, well, actually, it's moving fairly fast at 20 miles an hour, but it's strengthening very slowly. We are expecting this system, though, to become a hurricane within the next 72 hours. So certainly all interest in the islands here need to keep abreast to the latest developments from our tropical storm. It's a long ways away, so we have about 3, 4, 5 days to really watch it. And the latest satellite picture shows that it still has a lot of twist with it, but the deepest convection is coming and going. Overnight we did have the flare-up of convection with it, with the reds and the oranges, but so far this morning we've seen that the convection has died down a little bit. Nevertheless, we'll continue to watch it for you as we go through the next couple of days. We have quite a ways to watch this system for you. A little farther east, of course, this is George, and this is the West African coast. We haven't really noticed anything too impressive coming off of the African coast since George here, the Cape Verde Islands, but we are basically in the peak of hurricane season, so we will continue to look out toward the eastern Atlantic and the West African coast for impressive waves coming off the coast, but the latest has not been that impressive other than Tropical Storm George. Now in the Caribbean, we'll take you back west. This is Cuba, this is Jamaica, if you can see it here, and we haven't noticed anything impressive here. We've had some thunderstorm activity in western Cuba, but the general flow here is from north to south, as you see the clouds kind of brisking off toward the south. The Gulf of Mexico, though, we have a broad area of low pressure. This is a low pressure I was talking about at the beginning, and it's very broad, disorganized, about 1,005, the lowest pressure we could find. And you notice that to the east of the center of circulation is where we have the deepest convection from western Cuba and up toward the west coast of Florida. We have been watching the center of the low pressure to be basically located in the central Gulf of Mexico. You can't get more central than this in the Gulf, but deep convection to the east of it. Overnight, well, yesterday we had about 3.5 inches of rain in Miami, and still dealing with some deeper convection for the west coast of Florida. And as we go through the day, we'll watch these showers and thunderstorms develop across the peninsula and kind of pushing back toward the west in the central Gulf of Mexico. Even the western Gulf of Mexico will find the showers pushing toward the coast of Texas as we go through the day. So we'll keep you posted on that. Nothing too interesting in the eastern Pacific here. We don't see any signs of the imminent development as far as the tropics go, but we have been watching the western Pacific. This is Typhoon Todd. Now Todd is expected to strengthen a little bit more. It has already undergone extreme development over the past 12 hours. It is now a Category 4 typhoon, and it should continue to move north-northwest the next day or two, and that will put it closer to Japan. You can see it here, and it should get closer to Honshu as we go through the next couple of days. So we'll keep you posted on that. A quick look at the thunderstorm activity expected today. More coming up.
What'll the weather be like where you're going tomorrow? Find out while you're still in bed with a wake-up call from 1-900-WEATHER. Call 1-900-WEATHER for more information.
Witness the power of the tarot.
With over 22 years of tarot experience, I have witnessed amazing changes. As an expert in this ancient oracle that dates back thousands of years, I will tell you everything you should know. Call now and you will be dealt your very own special tarot cards. Be prepared for an extremely accurate and revealing reading. Tarot tarot cards should not be underestimated. These powerful cards may make all the difference in your life. They have ancient spiritual powers to change lives, reveal fortunes, even generate wealth. As an expert in this ancient oracle, I may reveal money matters, romantic encounters, how to avoid costly mistakes, your future happiness, and how to achieve your dreams. I want the cards to work for you and answer your questions. But you must call now.
Caution, a tarot card reading may be very personal and intense. Be prepared for amazing revelations. Call this special free number now.
Call 1-800-538-2998.
The best way to stop suffering from allergies is never to start. This is Nasal Crown. You heard right. Nasal Crown. It's allergy prevention. Nasal Crown doesn't just relieve allergies. It flat out prevents them. Preventing them.
Thanks for joining us for Storm Watch. I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso. This edition of Storm Watch brought to you by Honda Generators. Well, it's been a wet morning in St. Louis. We'll show you that radar in just a moment. But first, let's talk tropics. And here's our tropical expert, Mr. John Hope. John?
Thank you, Mark. Good morning, everybody. Well, we have two different areas in the tropics we're watching rather carefully. One is right here in the Gulf of Mexico. I'll get back to that in just a moment. And the other one is our tropical storm out here east of the Lesser Antilles. That's George, and we'll show you the latest particulars on George. Notice one thing, the top wind's now up to 60 miles an hour, centered 1,370 miles east of the Lesser Antilles. And the Lesser Antilles include the Leeward Islands and the Windward Islands. It continues to move straight toward the west. That does cause us a little bit of concern because it doesn't look in the near future as if it's going to turn north a whole lot. So we do have to be to realize that this could actually impact the islands. It's too early to say yet. Also, we think it's going to increase in intensity. You notice 60-mile-an-hour tropical storm now. We think there's quite a good chance in the next day or two that this will become a hurricane. We can show you a satellite picture out there, a visible picture this morning. And right there is the circulation center. We wouldn't call that an eye yet, but if it becomes a hurricane, I think that we could pretty well trace that along. And as you see, it's moving toward the west. It didn't seem to get a lot better organized overnight, but for the last several hours, I think it is. So it does seem as if it's going to go ahead now and develop a little bit more. The infrared picture, we don't quite see some of the deep showers that we saw 24 hours ago, but they are making a bit of a comeback. So this is something that we're going to have to watch very carefully, and we'll certainly let you know right away if there is any danger. Right now it's a tropical storm. It's not a hurricane. No warnings up. It's too far out to even think about that, over 1,000 miles from the islands. And behind that we do have another tropical wave flaring up a little bit just south of the Cape Verde Islands. In the Gulf of the Caribbean, what you see here is mostly outflow from that low in the Gulf, and we do have some pretty heavy showers over the eastern Gulf of Mexico. But over the last several hours, we've been able to identify a center. Let me focus in on that, come up a little bit closer, and you can see what's happened this morning. And for the first time, the hurricane hunters were able to close off a center, so they have found a center here. The National Hurricane Center has not yet upgraded this to a tropical depression, but very likely it will be upgraded, we think, to a tropical depression, perhaps sometime even later today. The reconnaissance aircraft still out there even as we speak. And the movement, we believe, is going to be toward the west or the west-northwest, but more on that as time goes by. It's not, we don't think it's going to move north. It's not very far off the coast of Louisiana now, but we're not concerned about it moving up in that direction, more toward the west or toward the west-northwest if this develops a little bit, which we're afraid it might. Now, out in the western Pacific, we wanted to tell you that we have a major typhoon out there. It is Todd. The top wind's up to 140 miles an hour, and the big concern here is that it's going to strike Japan directly. We think it's going to turn a little bit more toward the north and perhaps even toward the north-northwest. and impact Japan in about 48 hours. Top winds may be down a little bit, but it's still going to be a powerful typhoon by the time it gets there in Japan. So that's the tropics. Now let's come back to the U.S. and see what Mark can tell us about some weather here in the USA.
All right, thank you, John, and we'll see you in 1 hour from now. And as we take a look at our current map, there it is, our area disturbed weather John just told you all about. Well, up to the north, we're looking at a wet morning in St. Louis. To the west, changes are coming. Here comes a cold front, and this will bring in behind it cooler air from the Pacific Ocean. As we check on the potential for strong storms today, we're thinking now that there may be more strong storms developing here in through the northern Rockies. There's a cold pocket of air here, and there's some jet stream energy as well, so we may highlight this area on the afternoon update. In Texas, still some flood watches here. Around Aransas County, there was some very heavy rains last night. Here you can see on the water vapor a little swirl right here in Missouri. And it's not moving fast at all, and it's combining with this moisture plume to produce a wet morning in St. Louis. And notice to the west, other slow-moving downpours here. So it looks like you're stuck in a showery pattern here today.
Next, an update on the tropical disturbance that's helping drench Florida and parts of the Gulf Coast. Plus, the latest on Tropical Storm George on Weather Center.
This program was sponsored by Honda Generators. Power when you really need it.
There are some people who prefer to be left in the dark. But if you prefer the light, you need a Honda generator. They're easy to start, efficient, and quiet. But best of all, they're reliable.
And 26.8 north, 92.0 west, about 240 miles to the south-southeast of Lake Charles. This is forecast to become a tropical storm as it moves slowly for a while and then begins to pick up and move north and west during the day tomorrow. This could come on shore as early as tomorrow night, so that's something to watch. And that's why the tropical storm watches have already been posted from Grand Island, Louisiana to Sargent, Texas, which includes Galveston Bay and most of the Louisiana coastline. Now again, some strengthening is possible with this, and already we're feeling the problems with coastal flood warnings. Tides about 2 to 2.5 feet above normal thus far, and they will continue to get larger if our storm intensifies. Now believe it or not, this is the storm. I mean, tight but powerful. There's an upper low which you see rotating down and through here, and that's really not creating a favorable environment in the upper levels for this thing to develop. And as long as that is around, we won't have a favorable environment. But that is forecast to weaken, and as it does, this could strengthen. And at the same time this is occurring, we will see the steering winds begin to pick up from the southwest. You can see a little hint of that right here. Notice the cloud motion off to the northeast. Put this over here late tomorrow. So that means some of this could be picked up. And so whatever this is you know, if it's still a TD or a tropical storm or whatnot, it could be picked up and pulled on off to the north. In the meantime, we really don't have that well-defined moisture axis like we had in Francis, where Louisiana was just getting crushed with rainfall. As a matter of fact, you're on the dry northwest flow side of this now. But on the eastern side, showers and thunderstorms continue here, and these could be very heavy over Florida. There's actually a little mid-level circulation just off the coast of Florida, and that has been keeping you folks around Panama City and Destin very, very wet. And if the southerly flow tends to increase a little bit more, we could easily see some more of these showers and storms come into Florida, even during the overnight hours. So this is really the hot spot for the rainfall, at least for now. So we're watching Florida because of the rainfall. That may be the top story out of this whole thing before all is said and done. Now, George is a whole different animal here. About 1,300 miles to the east of the Lesser Antilles. Winds are 75 miles an hour. It is moving west at 20. Pressure is estimated at 987 millibars. And what we've watched today with George is the fact that it is trying to develop an eye wall, and even on the inside of that eye wall, an eye. So it's becoming much better organized as far as the central structure of the storm. And here you can see the islands here, and there's no reason at all with the current upper air pattern with this subtropical ridge to the north that George shouldn't continue to track on off toward the west. And this very well could impact the islands as we go in toward the weekend, and the forecast does bring it up there to quite a healthy storm. So this is definitely something that the folks in the islands need to keep a very good eye on and find out what is going to happen with this thing as we go on in time. All right. You know, there never comes a time when this thing doesn't lock up on me, so let me step off and see if we can get it to move perhaps in another way, shape, or form. And apparently not. So, Ralphie, what I'm going to tell you to do, since I have 43 seconds left, I'm going to ask you to go to the other story in the tropics, which is on our other source. If you could just punch that up, please. I appreciate it. Thank you. And that you see in the top part of your screen, ladies and gentlemen, is Typhoon Todd. Winds are at 140 miles an hour with this typhoon, and it is forecast to move north toward Japan and actually affect them with some adverse weather. Now, the good news is it appears that the eye structure with this is starting to weaken a little bit, and perhaps it is being sheared, but it almost is moving toward the north-northwest, heading toward Kyushu and the southern islands of Japan. So they need to prepare for this typhoon.
A depression in the Gulf threatens parts of the coast. Find out where flooding continues to be a problem. Weather Center is next after your local forecast.
This program was sponsored by Nationwide Insurance.
This is Jane.
Hi, I was coming down. I'm in sales.
This is Jane's car.
Traveling sales.
Hence Jane's problem.
Nationwide Insurance.
That's why this is Jane's Insurance Company. The company with round-the-clock claim service and a promise to help put your car back together just as you remember it, just as soon as possible. Ah, and this would be Jane's smile. Different needs, different solutions. Nationwide, on your side.
Over 13 million satisfied insurance and financial services customers throughout the U.S.
Every day, more people are choosing Lowe's Home Improvement Warehouse, and here's why.
Fall is for planting, and Lowe's has everything you need for your lawn and garden.
Fertilizers, bulbs, grass seed, mums.
A jungle's worth of trees and shrubs.
All back for a full year.
Plus everyday low prices guaranteed.
Ask a nursery specialist.
A Lowe's nursery specialist. We really know our stuff.
After all, you can't spell flowers without Lowe's. When it comes to home improvement,
Lowe's knows.
Base Camp the Forester report.
Me? I'm doing great. This Subaru Forester is a blast to drive. It's got a lot more horsepower than a CR-V. This all-wheel drive goes through anything. Handling.
Glad you could be with us here at the Weather Channel. You've joined us in time for Storm Watch, sponsored by Home Depot. We are looking at two tropical systems at this time. One, a hurricane in the central Atlantic. Another, a new tropical depression in the Gulf of Mexico, where we've seen several such systems form over the last few weeks. And we'll be looking at this, and we'll be looking at some stormy weather in the nation's capital. But first, we deal with what's happening around in the tropics with our tropical update. And we started off in the Gulf of Mexico. The latest information out of the National Hurricane Center on Tropical Depression 8 as of 7 p.m. Central Daylight Time. Top winds on the system 35 miles an hour, currently drifting southwest, but that is not expected to hold over the long term. Central pressure at about 1,000 millibars in the center of the system, 250 miles south-southeast of Lake Charles, Louisiana. The National Hurricane Center has issued tropical storm watches, which mean that we could potentially see tropical storm force winds and certainly heavy rains in this area in the next 36 hours to 72 hours from Sargent, Texas, over into Grand Island, Louisiana. Now, if it does look like this system is starting to turn back to the north and getting closer to the coast, that is when the National Hurricane Center would upgrade these to warnings. But right now, they are watches, which means you should be preparing, getting ready to take the appropriate actions should Tropical Depression 8 strengthen into a tropical storm and begin heading northward. We also have coastal flood warnings up from Grand Island, Louisiana, around the mouth of the Mississippi, across Lake Pontchartrain, and over in toward Mississippi, and then watch extending over in toward Pascagoula, Mississippi. Let's look at the pictures right now. Here is the system right in here. Notice we're seeing a brief flare-up of convection, not a lot right now. It's embedded in a larger low pressure flow at upper levels of the atmosphere, and that has brought quite a bit of rain in toward the Florida area. It looks like more heading in at the present time. Now right now, that's why it's drifting southwest, because this is caught up in that larger circulation. But this circulation at the upper levels appears to be weakening and moving away, so we are expecting a turn back more to the north as we go into the day on Friday, and that's why the National Hurricane Center has the watches issued here along the Texas and Louisiana Gulf Coast. So we'll be carefully watching the situation, and stay with us here at the Weather Channel as we continue to bring you the latest information that comes out from the Air Force Reserve Hurricane Hunter aircraft and from the National Hurricane Center. Let us head farther to the east now, where we're out dealing with a full-fledged hurricane, Hurricane George. As of 5 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, top wind 75 miles an hour, so currently a minimal hurricane, Category 1 on the Saffir-Simpson scale, centered 1,300 miles east of the Lesser Antilles and moving west at a pretty good clip at 20 miles an hour and central pressure at 987 millibars. Here's the system right here. You can see it is forming a fairly compact central dense overcast, and we might actually be seeing start of an eye forming here. We'll keep an eye on that for you. And it is still quite a ways from the Lesser Antilles. However, it is moving in this direction just slightly north of west. So right now, the northern Leeward and Windward Islands under a higher threat than the southern half of the island chain, but still anywhere along this chain you should be paying definite attention to what is happening with Hurricane George as it progresses westward. Way too soon to tell if it will affect the U.S. mainland, but still we certainly should be wary of this kind of storm. Cape Verde storms, as George is, have potential for being very dangerous ones, and this one is forecast to become potentially a major hurricane with winds over 100 miles an hour, getting up to Category 3 status here over the next few days. Here's a little better look at the system. You can see that starting to wrap around a little bit, maybe a little bit of an eye trying to form here. We'll keep watching the satellite pictures. We head farther to the east now, and there's another system behind George. This right here, you can see starting to blossom up somewhat. We're watching this also as it proceeds in the wake of our hurricane. Now, we head back into the Caribbean. Things pretty quiet in the Caribbean. Not too much going on. That is certainly some good news, so we don't have to worry here. Off the coast of the Pacific, not much going on. Excellent news. Quiet. However, the Western Pacific, not quiet. Typhoon Todd, right now heading up toward Japan, that just was finished dealing with Typhoon Stella. We'll be tracking it as it progresses farther to the north. Let's head back home now into the United States, where we do have some active weather in the United States going on at the present time. Areas shown in orange, that's areas where we could see some strong thunderstorms. Notice one of those areas right around the nation's capital, where a severe thunderstorm warning just expired for western Montgomery County, but you can still see some strong storms heading down here, down I-95 from Washington, D.C., so please be careful in and around the Virginia area heading out toward the Tidewater. Also watch for some wet weather in the Texas Hill Country. More details coming up on Weather Center.
Stay with the Weather Channel for a close-up look at a tropical depression in the Gulf that could cause more flooding for the region. Plus, the forecast for your area. Weather Center is next.
This program was sponsored by the Home Depot.
As a customer, you're so important to us that you should have the best price all the time rather than just sometimes when other stores think it's convenient for you.
Home Depot doesn't have sales because we have an everyday low price.
The competitors have
across the lower 48 in a moment. But first, a look at the tropics, and there is plenty to talk about this evening. Starting out first in the Gulf of Mexico with TD number 8. Tropical depression number 8 in the Gulf of Mexico. There you can see the latest coordinates. Not a whole lot of movement here. It's generally just drifting to the southwest. Sustained winds of 35 miles per hour. The estimated central pressure 1,000 millibars. Tropical storm watches have been issued because there is a possibility that this could strengthen to a tropical storm, even though it is just a tropical depression right now. But keep in mind, tropical storm watches mean that tropical storm conditions are possible within the next 36 hours. So we'll be watching portions of the Louisiana and Texas coast. All right, there's a look at the coastal flood warnings and watches that remain in effect. Still getting some easterly flow here, southeasterly flow, and that's been keeping the potential for coastal flooding a real threat there into parts of southeastern Louisiana. Here's the center of circulation, not necessarily real easy to pick out. We've had convection kind of wax and wane dealing with this particular area as we worked our way through the evening. There's a broader circulation kind of defined by the upper levels here, and we continue to see more of that moisture streaming on up into parts of Florida, into southwestern Florida to be exact, at least for the next few hours. That looks like that's where the bullseye zone is going to be. We'll have to continue to monitor this. The exact movement, of course, is going to remain to be seen, as it's just drifting at this point. So this will be a force to really watch as we head through the next several days. We'll be watching for possible strengthening, and of course we'll be keeping an eye out for the potential for it to move closer to the coast. Those are two ifs, and those are two things that we'll watch very closely with our tropical depression. Should it, by the way, be upgraded to a tropical storm, it would be called Hermine. We've got Hurricane George out here in the Atlantic, and there are the latest coordinates with George. 1,150 miles to the east of the Lesser Antilles, sustained winds of 80 miles per hour, moving to the west at 21 miles per hour, and the estimated pressure 984 millibars. So the winds have gone up here, the movement has sped up just a little bit, and again the estimated central pressure 984 continues to go down, and that has been the case throughout the day. Starting to see a little more development of an eye there, and there again the Lesser Antilles, point them out there. There's Barbados sticking out a little bit further eastward. This continues pretty much a due west track at this point in time, and it's possible that as we head through the day on Friday, we may be talking about maybe some hurricane watches and warnings being established. That's a possibility. This is expected to increase in intensity. It is possible that this could become a Category 3 or a major hurricane, capable of causing some real damage. So we'll be watching this very, very closely as it gets closer to the Lesser Antilles. And by the way, if you're planning a vacation there over the weekend, or if you're watching from that region, we would urge you to monitor the situation very, very closely. If you are not prepared for a hurricane, you really should start to get in that mode and start thinking about, what should I do? It's always best to be prepared instead of being caught off guard. So again, the exact track of this, not a certainty at all. But if you've got a hurricane that's expected to strengthen, moving toward you, you certainly need to monitor the situation. Could be a very dangerous situation, and we may be talking about in the next 3 days this being a factor around the Lesser Antilles. Again, that's a possibility. Just to the east of George, we have another development here. We'll be watching this as well, as it has already moved off the coast of Africa and is now over warmer waters of the Atlantic. So a couple things to watch there. Well, that's a look at what's happening as we take you across the Atlantic Basin, and there certainly was plenty to talk about there. Let's see if I can head you back into the lower 48, and we'll take a quick inspection of, again, some of the moisture on into Texas, and I talked about the rain into Florida. We'll continue to see more showers and even a few thunderstorms entering the picture here across the southern tip, getting soaked now around Fort Myers, Sanibel, and Captiva. Maybe some of these thunderstorms could produce some gusty winds. And the same can be said for some of the action here. Some of this moving south and east may eventually affect you in and around Richmond, seeing some of that rain pick up in your area. We'll be back.
Coming up, a tropical depression has an effect on the Gulf states, and the nation's midsection gets a heavy dose of rain. Weather Center is just ahead.
Hi, I'm Bob Vila, and I'm here to show you a great new hand tool from Sears. What you working on, Tim?
Well, I'm fixing this wheel, but these pliers make it really difficult. I mean, it takes 2 hands to adjust them, and even then it doesn't fit quite right, so I end up rounding off this nut.
Try RoboGrip instead of those slip joint pliers. With RoboGrip's unique design, you only need 1 hand to use them. Just a simple squeeze of the spring-loaded handle, and the jaws automatically adjust for a perfect fit. RoboGrip makes any job easier. It's perfect for